The low-cost carrier model's officially dead, and Delta's using a premium retail strategy to dance on its grave. Welcome to Earnings Unscripted. Today's July 10th, 2026, and we're looking at Delta's second quarter results. Ticker DAL. And Monroe, operating revenue hit nearly $20 billion, which is a massive lead from the start of the year.
Up roughly 24% sequentially, actually. But the real story isn't just the top line. It's how much cash they're keeping. The whole sector's choking on fuel inflation right now, yet Delta somehow hauled in an operating profit of around $1.8 billion for the quarter.
Which completely turned around that brutal first quarter loss. Diluted earnings came in at $2.44 a share. By the way, before we pull this all apart, quick reminder that this is just our personal take and definitely not financial advice. But seriously, going from a loss to that kind of profit in one quarter, it feels like they're flying in a different reality than the budget airlines.
Oh, they absolutely are. Management basically spelled it out. The old moat for budget carriers was cheap fuel and cheap airplanes, and that's structurally over. Delta's just passing those soaring fuel costs straight down to the consumer, and they're happily paying it.
Which blew my mind reading this report. Premium cabin revenue just overtook the main cabin. Everyone's feeling inflation at the grocery store, but apparently we're absolutely splurging on extra legroom.
Well, capacity is incredibly tight across the board. When you can't just throw more planes in the sky, the network with the best premium product has absolute pricing power. They don't have to compete on the cheapest fare anymore.
Right, which makes the stock action today super confusing to me. If they knocked the cover off the ball, why did it gap down so hard pre-market?
Yeah, the tape was wild today. It spiked early, then saw a really steep sell-off into the open, but it bottomed out right as the 10 a.m. earnings call kicked off, and then just steadily drifted upward while management talked. Still closed modestly lower, though.
Okay, so the market's clearly sweating some of the underlying details. Maybe that weird drop in maintenance revenue we saw, or the oil refinery issue?
Exactly. The headline looks bulletproof, but the engine definitely has a few knocks if you check the telemetry.
All right, let's get into the details then, because there's also this wild story about them outsourcing baggage claim nightmares to AI, and I really need to know if it's actually working.
It's actually working, and it's structurally changing their cost margins. They rolled out this proprietary baggage AI tech in their Atlanta hub, and it essentially slashed their domestic mishandled baggage rate by 50% in June alone.
Wait, 50%? That's okay. Anyone who flies out of Atlanta knows that's a small miracle. But how does that move the financial needle for a company that's massive?
Because airlines leak millions in operational friction, compensating passengers, redirecting flights, paying staff to hunt down lost bags. When you solve that algorithmically, you're literally cutting fat out of the system permanently.
Okay, fair point. Efficiency gains drop straight to the bottom line. But going back to that premium demand we mentioned earlier, if inflation's squeezing everyone, are we just hoping people keep swiping their credit cards for big seats indefinitely?
That brings us to their new tier strategy. Management just introduced a system to unbundle the premium cabin itself into basic, classic, and extra options.
Okay, wait. They're making a basic economy version of first class? So what, you get the big seat, but they don't give you the warm nuts and the blanket?
Not quite. You still get the core service, but you trade away flexibility. The real genius here is dodging corporate travel bans.
Oh, interesting. Walk me through that.
A lot of companies have strict travel policies that ban booking straight into premium cabins, but they allow upgrades or basic fares that fall under a certain classification. By creating these micro tiers, Delta sneaks right past those corporate procurement filters. It allows them to price discriminate tighter without losing the lucrative business traveler.
Wow. So it's the exact same merchandising ladder they used in the main cabin a decade ago, just moved up front. That's incredibly clever.
Exactly. Ed Bostian actually had a great line on the call. He said, "I think we used to call it decommoditization, and today we're up to premium strategy. 10 years ago, we were a blunt instrument."
A blunt instrument. Well, they're definitely using a scalpel now. But this whole premium strategy also leans heavily on their loyalty program, doesn't it?
It's the whole engine. Let me throw a new number at you. In this quarter alone, their remuneration from the American Express partnership grew sequentially to roughly $2.4 billion.
$1 billion with a B just from the credit card partnership?
Right. They're essentially operating like a high-yield credit card vendor that just happens to fly planes on the side. That SkyMiles cash flow is a massive margin defense mechanism against industry headwinds.
So you pair that cash machine with a structurally safer pricing environment. Ed Bastian was arguing that low-cost carriers have basically lost their structural advantage.
Yes, because the old upstart model relied on growing faster than your costs. Now that planes, real estate, and pilots are astronomically expensive, you need a network moat to survive.
Right. And a strong brand. People actually seek them out now.
Which Bastian noted directly, quote, "You'd ask someone why they picked a specific airline. At least 80% of the time, it was whoever had the lowest price. Today, if you ask a consumer, why did you choose Delta, they'll tell you it's because it's Delta."
Which is a wild shift in consumer psychology for an airline. But it makes me wonder, if they're pricing themselves as a premium lifestyle brand, how much further can they push fares before the consumer actually breaks? Let's take a step back and look at where this is all heading.
It depends on the consumer segment, but looking ahead, management clearly doesn't see a breaking point soon. They completely reaffirmed their full-year guidance. They're still calling for an adjusted EPS somewhere between $6.50 and $7.50, and they expect to generate roughly $3 to $4 billion in free cash flow for the year.
That's some serious confidence. But earlier you hinted at a few engine knocks under the hood. If demand isn't the problem, what's actually threatening that outlook?
Well, it's mostly operational hiccups. Take their Monroe refinery. They bought it to hedge energy costs, but they suffered a temporary plant outage recently. It cost them 5 cents a share last quarter, and management warned that the outage tail will bleed some additional pain into the third quarter. Plus, their third-party engine repair business surprisingly shrank sequentially.
Right, the maintenance repair side. If nobody can buy new planes easily, you'd think fixing the old ones would be absolutely booming right now.
Exactly. That sequential dip could just be a temporary supply chain bottleneck on parts, but it's a notable gap in their growth narrative. Still, they're projecting third-quarter earnings to land between $2 and $2.50 per share. They even noted some capacity softness in Latin America tied to regional incidents, but overall, they still expect double-digit margins to hold up.
Which brings us back to that whole ecosystem strategy we were talking about. They aren't just selling flights anymore. It's loyalty, it's credit cards, and eventually it's tech infrastructure. Management even teased a future partnership with Amazon Leo for next-generation satellite Wi-Fi launching in 2028.
Yeah, giving tech investors a nice, shiny milestone out on the horizon never hurts.
Hey, if I'm stuck on a cross-country flight, hyper-fast internet sounds amazing. It really does highlight how they're basically operating as a lifestyle brand bundled with a bank at this point. Although, honestly, I think the people getting the absolute best service are those World War II veterans Delta just flew out to Normandy.
Yeah, flying over for the D-Day anniversary ceremonies. That's a genuinely fantastic move from the company.
Completely agree. Well, before we talk ourselves into upgrading our next tickets, let's go ahead and wrap this up. See you all after the next earnings call. If you want these episodes to just magically show up in your feed, you should probably hit follow. We actually put this podcast together with a bit of AI assistance to help us comb through those massive SEC filings, which frees us up to focus on the real story. And if there's a ticker you want us to dig into next, just send an email to earningsunscripted@datamadness.ca or grab the X link in our show notes.
See you next time.